This video is sponsored by Squarespace. This video is about Games Workshop and my complicated relationship with their products. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the new Leviathan Box Set and what I think of it. I've been making videos on this channel for a little bit under 4 years now, and for those of you just tuning in, this used to be pretty much entirely a Warhammer model painting channel. When I started in 2019, it was primarily about my love affair with Warhammer, specifically with the second edition of Age of Sigmar, which was my reintroduction back into the world of miniatures after a long time away. Year 2 of this channel saw me expand into the universe of 40k, and while 40k has never been my favorite setting, there really is a lot that I do like about it. And it's undeniable that some of the most fun I've had over the past few years has been painting and learning about these models from the 41st millennium. Year 3 of this channel saw me branching out into paint reviews. That was what was doing well at the time on YouTube, so I ended up making a whole lot of those. And since then, I've sort of been branching out, making more experimental content, and slowly but steadily, less and less Warhammer models have been featured on the channel. And I want to say this hasn't been an intentional decision on my part. There have just been a lot of other games and models and topics that have been exciting me a little bit more lately, and I've let my Warhammer content sort of slide to the side a little bit. It's not that I think GW's output has been bad lately in any way, it's more like I just haven't felt that excited by anything they've put out in a while. And I'm not entirely sure why this is. Technically speaking, the models that they have been putting out are higher and higher in quality. And in theory, they're even addressing some factions and parts of the lore that I really would have wanted to see in model form a few years ago. We finally got space dwarves, for instance, and Kill Team has been giving us all sorts of niche models and warbands that a lot of people have been wanting to see for a long time, myself included. And meanwhile, Age of Sigmar has been doing the same thing between the Underworlds warbands and the Warcry warbands, and we're finally getting that grimdark, plain old human faction that everyone's been asking for a long time. And a few years ago, all of this stuff would have felt really, really exciting to me, but for some reason, right now it doesn't. It just hasn't felt as exciting to me as it used to feel. Things like the introduction of the Night Haunt, or the revamp of the Gloomspite Gits, the Ossiarch Bone Reapers, Cursed City, even the Indominus box and the revamp of the Necron faction, or that Octarius box with the Orcs and the Guard guys. All of those things felt super exciting to me, and I just can't think of the last time that GW's put out a new offering that felt that way, that made me feel that strongly. I think a part of it is definitely the corporate side of it, whereas before I was more easily able to ignore the corporate megalith that is really profit-driven, that is Games Workshop. I just find it harder and harder to ignore the company. I still like the game worlds and the products, but there's this ever-present corporate oversight, which is just feeling more and more present in the models and the products themselves lately. So maybe that's a part of it. And I think another part of it is that I really used to love Age of Sigmar and Warcry and the models that, not Underworlds itself, but at least the models that we got from Underworlds, where I think the introduction of 3rd edition of Age of Sigmar was a bit of a turnoff for me. At first, I really enjoyed how distinct Age of Sigmar and 40k felt from each other. They were two very distinct worlds, but with 3rd edition and this introduction of this weird colonialist plotline, which you know what I'm talking about if you're into Age of Sigmar, I just felt like both games have been intruding on each other's vibe and feel in a way that I don't really like. I really liked that we had these two really distinct product lines, but now when I look at the art for each of the games, it's like they're slowly they're slowly growing more and more together. The models, of course, continue to look amazing. I just find myself a little bit less involved or interested in the setting as I used to be. In some ways, it has been freeing to try new things, but I will say that I do sometimes miss Warhammer a little bit. I miss keeping up with the newest releases and the storylines and everything, which I just largely haven't been doing over the past year. So when Leviathan went up for pre-order at my local game store a few months ago, I did order a copy. And I guess what I was hoping for is that this box would maybe help reignite some of the passion that I once felt for 40K or Games Workshop in general. I can't really speak too strongly towards the rules or anything, but there is a lot of things in this book that I do like. There's a lot I don't like, as usual, but I think that's part of the charm of being a fan of Games Workshop products in the first place, and maybe you know what I mean. I think there would be a lot less to discuss if it didn't have these little problems, and I find that often with all kinds of media, I like these imperfect things where, you know, maybe the story and the visuals are really good, but the acting is terrible. I love stuff like that. And I think that's one of the reasons I keep being drawn back to Games Workshop products. There's just a lot more to talk about with an imperfect product like that. And well, I do want to talk more about this box. Right now, I want to tell you about another box, or a square space, if you will. That's right, it's time to talk about this video's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one website and hosting platform that I've been using for over a decade now for all of my website needs. You just pick a template that looks good to you, add in any extra templates or pages that you might want, and customize things to your heart's content using their incredibly intuitive drag and drop grid system. I've been using my current Squarespace website for just a little bit over a year now to house a gallery of my painted miniatures, extra reference documents, and paint charts that might be useful to you. And I have to say, I have been really happy with the results so far. So if you need a website, why not check out squarespace.com today for a free trial? And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Dana Howl for 10% off your very first purchase of a website or domain. So without further ado, let's talk Leviathan. So if you've been living under a rock or you don't know anything about Warhammer, in which case I don't know why you're watching the video this far in, this was the limited edition core box to kick off the 10th edition of 40K. And I've had this sitting on my shelf for a few months now. I purchased this with my own money from my own local game store, which, if you're wondering, is 401 Games in Toronto, Ontario. That's not a plug, I just like shopping there. And with moving and everything, I've been too busy to open the darn thing ever since. That is until the past 2 weeks, where I've been opening the box, assembling the models, reading the book, and trying to fully immerse myself in the lore of 40K. So right from the beginning, the box exterior is giving me serious StarCraft vibes, and I'm sure I'm not the first person to say that, but it had to be said. Personally, I think this is a great association to have. It brings to mind that classic aliens versus Marines kind of conflict, and I have to say I really do like this box art. It's extremely simple, showing us two halves of one monstrous face, one Tyranid and one Terminator, perhaps symbolically trying to hint to us that one of these is not more monstrous than the other, and that there are no good guys in 40K. Great start, honestly. That's what I'm about. Taking a look at the back of the box, the Tyranids do look really cool. That's definitely what inspired me to get this box in the first place. And the new Space Marines, well, they look like Space Marines. I guess they have Terminators now, which a lot of people are excited about. I think they look pretty cool. As a side note, I really love the photographs of the models on the side of the box, which show you not only the models inside the box, but also some potential color scheme variations to get your motor running. The Tyranids are extremely detailed and were extremely easy to put together, and I have to say I'm quite excited to paint them up in my own color scheme. The Space Marines, once again, they look like Space Marines, but I'm sure that much like last time I painted Space Marines, I'll have a lot more fun painting them than I expected to have. Overall, the models are extremely high quality, as I would expect, easy to build, and I'm really impressed that they managed to include not just one large model, but several really large models in this box set. I feel like after having assembled most of it, I really feel like I've gotten my value's worth for plastic, if that's a thing. And below all the models, we have what I like to call the basement of the box. With all of the other stuff, we have a rulebook, assembly instructions, some kind of promotional paperwork, a bunch of decals, the bases for the models, as well as what looks like some cards, which are probably for gameplay of the game. And we'll go into more detail on the rest of this stuff in a moment, but before we go any further, I just want to say that after unboxing this for the first time, I couldn't help but feel slightly disappointed. Like, yeah, the models are cool and it's a great value for what you get. You get a ton of plastic for the money compared to most GW offerings. But this is supposed to be the limited edition box for 10th edition. Usually that has some sort of specialness to it when it's the 10th edition of something. Maybe I was just hoping there would be something else in here, something that makes it feel a little bit special, but honestly, this feels a lot less special to me than the Indominus box from last edition. It's not a bad box per se. I think it's a really great value. I've heard the rules updates are good, and I've also heard bad things, and I really like the new Combat Patrol format, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But I guess I just felt like this box was lacking that secret spice that I would be expecting from a limited edition of 10th edition. I guess in my head, I was just thinking if this is the 10th edition, this would be the perfect time to do any major shakeups you wanted to do in the lore or even the artwork, the way that things are portrayed in the setting. This would be a great time to do a soft reboot of those things if you wanted to do them. But unfortunately, there's nothing like that in this box. It's just sort of a remaster of Tyranids and some new Terminators, I guess. It doesn't feel like a new edition to me. It just feels like maybe edition 9.5? I don't know. Maybe that's just me. And I will give them credit where credit's due. The new Screamer Killer is a really cool adaptation of a retro model. Imagine if the whole box was like that. That would be a really cool thing. If the whole thing remastered retro models for the future, that would be the sort of thing I would expect for a 10th edition. The models are nice, the book is nice, I like the whole Combat Patrol thing. I guess my expectations were a little bit higher than they should have been for what is essentially, the status quo new product cycle. Yeah. Am I excited to paint these models and read the rest of the book and make a bunch of combat patrols? Yes, absolutely. But also, do I wish that this was the edition where they added a time skip to the story, or added female space marines, or something equivalent, some major thing that the fans had been wanting? Maybe introduce a completely new faction to the lore which shakes things up. I don't know, I would take any one of those things, or even just the hint of one of those things. Because it's 10th edition, and you're kind of expecting some big change or reveal, but I don't think we're ever going to get that again with the current state of Warhammer. If you're going to make any major status quo change like that, 10th edition would have been the time to do it. I feel like from a symbolic point of view, from a marketing point of view, 10th edition could have been a huge reboot to bring maybe a larger audience into the game, but they, I guess, chose not to do that. And I totally get why they didn't do that. GW is a publicly traded company, which means they are profit-driven. It's nothing personal. They are just a profit-driven company, and they want to sell as many of these boxes as possible, so they want to make the safest bets possible. Effectively, it's the same reason that Disney keeps pumping out live-action remakes of their animated films. It's a safe bet for a large company to make because if they lose money, it's against their goals, basically. So they want to make sure that they adhere to the status quo so they can keep selling a certain amount of boxes. Unfortunately, I feel like in the long term, these safe bets are just eroding the goodwill that a lot of people have towards the company. Essentially, the bigger your company gets, the safer you have to be with those risks and bets. And so I totally get why Warhammer is very much about the status quo. With that said, I have not caught up on all of the new lore yet, so maybe there will be a few surprises inside, who knows. But for now, I'm going to keep doing what I've always been doing and keep on pretending that the rulebooks are all written from an in-world Imperial point of view. And meanwhile, I'll write my own lore about the factions that I like and keep on playing with my toys in the way I want to. So that is how I am currently feeling about Games Workshop, about Leviathan, and my relationship to their products. I'm excited to paint these Tyranids. I have some really fun ideas for what to do with them. Beyond this, it seems like I already have a ton of models that will work in the new Combat Patrol format, so I'm a little bit excited about that as well. If you're not familiar with the Combat Patrol format, it's a new format that they're really pushing in this new edition, which uses a smaller model count per side, not quite like Kill Team 10 models. It's more like, I don't know, 15 to 25 models per side. So it's really ideal for painting up quickly, and it's also ideal for something like, I don't know, a YouTube video. The only restriction is that currently you only get one of these lists per faction, which is sort of balanced against each other faction's Combat Patrol list. But in my opinion, this is actually not necessarily a bad thing. For someone like me, I find list building to be quite stressful. And I really like that I can just buy a box off the shelf, paint it, and then I can use it in a game format. Oh, did I mention, by the way, that most of the Combat Patrol lists match up with the Combat Patrol boxes that they've been releasing for a year or two now, that sort of been replacing the Start Collecting boxes. So for someone like me who's been interested in the painting, and I have a lot of painted models, but I'm a beginner when it comes to actually playing the game, this is actually the most ideal format for me. The Leviathan box itself comes with 2 complete Combat Patrols, so I'm really excited to get those painted up so that I can play them against each other. And not only this, but when I've been looking through the rulebook, I realized that I have almost everything you need for both the Necrons and the Sisters of Battle Combat Patrols, so I'm excited to add the one model I'm missing to each of those forces, so then I will have 4 Combat Patrols if I finish painting the Leviathan box. So that's quite exciting. I like the idea of having 4 mini armies so that if a friend comes over and wants to play the game, I can say, here you go, you can pick from one of these armies and play a more beginner-friendly version of the game. And honestly, that's kind of exciting. It makes me feel kind of excited about Warhammer again, to have these little mini goals of painting up Combat Patrols so that I can play the game at some point in the theoretical future. And honestly, it surprised me to hear myself saying that as much as it probably does you, because I know I've been saying a lot of negative things about Games Workshop in this video, but honestly, those things come from a place of love. And while I have my problems with Warhammer, I still do love it in my heart, and I just want it to be better. And that's true of all of my hobbies. You know, the more you get invested in something, the more disappointing it is when it's not going the way that you particularly want. Maybe 40K is going in a direction that a lot of people want. The point is, I do feel a little bit more excitement now about Games Workshop, and if I can afford the expensive models, I could see myself buying more in the future, especially more of the Combat Patrol boxes, as I keep saying. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it hasn't been too rambly, or if it has, that's the sort of thing you wanted to hear from me in this video. Thank you to all of our lovely patrons for the constant support over on Patreon. If you'd like to join our lovely, inclusive, exclusive Discord server, you can do so over at patreon.com/Dana Howl, and you'll also get to see your name up in the credits on the screen right now. Thank you so much for watching. and I challenge you personally to leave a comment down in the description that doesn't include the word heresy. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments what you are most excited about in 10th edition. Is it Combat Patrol? Is it the new Tyranids? Is it the Terminators? Let me know what it is and why. I'm genuinely curious. And I will see you in the next video.